Glory be to God, Mighty God Ministries, episode 73, and we are doing Revelation series, chapter 13. So let's get our app up here so we can get rolling. All right. So in the last chapter, we know that it was the woman and the dragon. We went over that, and we last part, which starts out. The next one is then the dragon took his stand on the shore beside the sea, and we talked about how that could have a couple different meanings, as far as the woman and the dragon, whether that meant the bride of Christ, or whether that was talking about Mary when she was having Jesus, and the king at the time was I forget which king it was. Was it Herod? I think it was King Herod that was trying to track down Jesus and kill him. Essentially, we don't know the whole thing about that, but again, we went over the more important things on that, and so we're just going to move on, and roll with it. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to read this, and then we'll break it down and go over it. All right, so the beast out of the sea. And again, Revelations gets a little crazier and crazier. So again, we need to make sure that when we're done and we go over this, we're going to go over the main points, because a lot of this stuff is going to show you different things, but there's main points that you want to understand. Okay, so we'll get reading and then we'll go from there. Then I saw a beast rising up out of the sea. It had 7 heads and 10 horns, with 10 crowns on its horns. And written on each head were names that blasphemed God. This beast looked like a leopard, but it had the feet of a bear and the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave the beast his own power and throne and great authority. I saw that one of the heads of the beast seemed wounded beyond recovery, but the fatal wound was healed. The whole world marveled at this miracle and gave allegiance to the beast. They worshipped the dragon for giving the beast such power, and they also worshipped the beast, who is as great as the beast. They exclaimed, "Who is able to fight against him?" Then the beast was allowed to speak great blasphemies against God, and he was given authority to do whatever he wanted for 42 months. And he spoke terrible words of blasphemy against God, slandering his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. And the beast was allowed to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And he was given the authority to rule over every tribe and people and language and nation. And all the people who belong to this world worship the beast. They are the ones whose names were not written in the book of life that belongs to the Lamb who was slaughtered before the world was made. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Anyone who is destined for prison will be taken to prison. Anyone destined to die by the sword will die by the sword. This means that God's holy people must endure persecution patiently and remain faithful. Okay, the beast out of the earth. Then I saw another beast come up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like those of a lamb, but he spoke with the voice of a dragon. He exercised all the authority of the first beast, and he required all the earth and its people to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. He did astounding miracles, even making fire flash down to earth from the sky while everyone was watching. And with all the miracles he was allowed to perform on behalf of the first beast, he deceived all the people who belong to this world. He ordered the people to make a great statue of the first beast, who was fatally wounded and then came back to life. He was then permitted to give life to this statue so that it could speak. Then the statue of the beast commanded that anyone refusing to worship it must die. He required everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark on the right hand or on the forehead, and no one could buy or sell anything without that mark, which was either the name of the beast or the number representing his name. Wisdom is needed here. Let the one with the understanding solve the meaning of the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Okay, so there's definitely a lot of stuff in here. There's definitely a lot of stuff in here. And you could take this multiple different ways, and people have broken this down. when they talk about the beast, then you're going to find out about the Antichrist and all this. Some of them, there's two different positions on this, and we're going to break it down after this, but just to give you a couple different ideas, okay? And again, the main thing you want to take from this is the main concept. If you were just going to shut this video off in like 5 minutes, right? The main concept is basically you want to deny the mark of the beast, whatever that ends up being, right? And that's going to be hard, right? Because if you deny that, right, you're not going to be able to buy or sell anything. So it's basically going to put you in a position where you're going to be in a bad place. But you have to remember that God will provide for his people, right? God will provide for his people. And again, if you get persecuted and you die, you're going to die one way or the other. You're going to, no matter what, you're going to die, right? So you definitely want to die believing in God, because if we go to the final chapter and we flash forward, right, to chapter 22, you're going to see that eventually what's going to happen is God's going to take down all these demonic forces. He's going to bind up the devil and throw them all into the burning river of fire, essentially. And then everyone who believes in God is going to be up in heaven with him ruling, essentially. So that's your cliff notes. So right there, if we just said that, you could say, okay, we're done. We're done with this chapter. But let's break it down in the multiple different ways. And depending on who you talk to, some of the people see this as literal, where it's like an actual beast, which is one way you could take it. Some of the people believe that it's going to be a battle and it is going to be a parable, and what they're talking about is a lot of people consider it like Israel, okay, the actual land of Israel, and that this beast and all these things that are going to come out are going to attack Israel, essentially, okay? Now, whether that means that this is like a powerful position that rules over the people of the world, that essentially the devil puts into a power position that maybe gets all the nations to come up together and go against Israel. That's one thought that a lot of people believe, that could be it. That's what's going to happen. And this is it's a person that is going to basically stand up, and then essentially what the one way they look at it is this person's going to bring peace at first. They're going to bring peace, and supposedly they would most likely bring peace by doing some peace treaties, right? And they would start out like that. But then what's going to happen is they're going to basically go against those peace treaties, essentially, and then all these places are going to attack Israel. That's one aspect of it, and that's definitely possible. There's also the mark of the beast. We don't know if this is it's a physical mark, right? Is it a physical mark? Like you have to have a chip implanted in you. There's different talks about that, like, an RFID tag for medical and all these other things. So like, is it like that? Or again, is it just like, could it mean like, your phone, there's no more money anymore and you have to use everyone has to use like the same form of currency, or whether it's through an electronic app throughout the entire world. Like, maybe they make like one currency across the entire world and there's one app and that's the only way you can do it, right? That's it. Okay. And then the other theory is that, like, again, could this beast, and I'm throwing a lot out there, so you can disregard these. But I'm just throwing some thought process out there to see, could this beast that's given life and can talk, again, could that be like artificial intelligence? Could it be AI and artificial intelligence, where it's like, okay, people are creating this code and this thing that has its own. It's obviously created by people, but it has learning mechanisms in it, and it could speak on its own. Again, we don't know, and that one's probably not what this is at all. But it's just you can look at different things, and there's a lot of different perspectives on this. Let's go through it. Let's take it literal for right now. Again, those are the different ways we can take it. Let's take it literal. Okay, but I don't believe it's 100% literal. I do think that there's, it may mean that someone's going to be put in a powerful position, and that they're going to rule, and whether it's like they rule over all the nations, it's that type of thing where it becomes like a one world nation or some crazy stuff like that. Again, we don't know. But let's go. So then I saw a beast rising up out of the sea. Okay, it had 7 heads and 10 horns with 10 crowns on its horn. And written on each head were names that blaspheme God. Okay, so essentially, obviously, we know this is bad because one of the things you're never supposed to do is blaspheme God. It's one of the worst things you could do. So you definitely don't want to do that. So we know this is a evil, demonic spirit. Obviously, the devil. It's definitely that. Okay, and we know if we go back to the last chapter, it says, then the dragon took his stand on the shore beside the sea, right? So on the shore beside the sea right there, okay? But then it's saying this is the beast out of the sea. Okay, so let's go back. What's it say? Then the dragon took his stand on the shore beside the sea, and then in the last chapter, this is saying the beast out of the sea. So maybe this is describing essentially the devil, right? At least in the beginning. Okay. But if we look real close, this beast looked like a leopard, but it had the feet of the bear and the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave the beast his own power and throne and great authority. Okay, so we know what? This is not the devil. It's a separate beast, right? We know that because it describes it, and then it says, and the dragon gave the beast his own power and throne and great authority. Okay? So again, what does this sound like though? We know what the devil is, right? He's a copycat because he can't create, right? So what's he doing? He's copying God, right? He's still copying God because what did God do? God did what? He sent Jesus Christ down to earth, right? To live a sinless life, die on the cross, take away the sins of the world, and now where does he sit? He sits on God's throne, right, to the right hand of the Father. So again, look at the how the deception is on this. He's trying to copy again. So what's he doing? He's taking this beast. It looked like a leopard, but it had the feet of the bear and the mouth of a lion. What do we know Jesus looks like? He's the Lamb of Judah, right? Or well, I shouldn't say the Lion of Judah, but then also the Lamb. Okay. But again, let's look at this. It's okay, so it's a bear and a mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave the beast his own power and throne and great authority. So again, if you take this as a physical thing, okay, then it's going to be a physical an animal or some type of animal essentially, and this animal is going to have its own power and own throne and great authority. So it essentially is going to have ruling power in the world. Okay. If you take this as an analogy, then it could mean that this is an actual person that the devil puts in a position of authority, right? And lets them they're going to be such in a high powered authority position that they'll be able to rule over the world essentially. And that's how that, so you can look at two different ways. Okay. I saw that one of the heads of the beast seemed wounded beyond recovery. Okay. Again, it's just interesting because what does it say in Jesus in Revelations, and when it talks about it, it says the lamb was slaughtered. So again, it's just funny that's a copycat. Seeing wounded, but the fatal wound was healed. The whole world marveled at this miracle and gave allegiance to the beast. Okay, so again, if we take this literal, then that means it's a beast that was wounded or shot or something however, whatever happens to it, you know what I mean? But then he heals it. If we take this as an analogy, then it's a person that the beast put into, power, right? But maybe they got shot at or something happened to them and maybe they didn't actually come back to life 100%, but they got hurt very badly and they were healed. Okay. Now whether that's through manipulation skills, because we know the devil is a liar and a schemer, and we believe that he cannot create, but he can obviously do. He does have capabilities, certain powers. Okay. So the whole world marveled at this miracle and gave allegiance to the beast. Again, so that's the whole world is going to basically bow down to this beast, which that is absolutely not what you want to do. You do not want to be like the world, because again, the world is not what you want to do. That is going to lead you to destruction and death and burning fire. You want to be Jesus Christ, like him. You want to exemplify his image, which is to take the world and throw it in the trash can, essentially. Because that's what's going to happen to the world. It's going to be burned and thrown into the trash can. That's essentially what's going to happen. Okay, and then it says right there, here, who is as great as the beast, they exclaimed. Who is able to fight against him? So again, this is showing whether it's a beast and it's a, a beast like, we're thinking like a monster movie or something like that, or whether it's a person, this person, if it's a person, the person's going to be in a very powerful position and they're going to be able to control the world. Now, whether that's like, obviously right now, if you think about it, the United States is obviously one of the most powerful just because of the army and the alliances it has, right? So you could say, could it be like the president of the United States, or could things topple over and it's like, the United Nations or some other world thing that they set up, and it's, all the nations bond together, and then there's a leader over top of all of them. You know, we don't know, but we know that there's going to be a battle in Israel. So we know that whoever is in charge of this, there's going to be deception, and they're going to deceive Israel, thinking that there's going to be peace, but then they're really going to try and destroy them. Okay, we know that's going to happen because it says it later on. But we can see here, he was able to fight against the beast, right? Again, who can fight against the beast? Well, we know right now. Again, it's going to play out a different way, but who do we know is going to do it? Right? Jesus is going to take down anything, because it's the same thing would happen with David and Goliath, right? They said who can kill Goliath, and no one would do it, but they brought a shepherd boy out with the power of God. What happened? He was able to kill him with one rock, even though he picked up 5 rocks, because Goliath had 4 brothers. So if he needed the extra 4 to kill the 4 brothers, he had it ready. But again, with God, he didn't need it. He only needed 1 rock to kill him. Okay, then the beast was allowed to speak great blasphemies against God, and he was given authority to do whatever he wanted for 42 months. Okay, so that's again 42 months. That's a decent amount of time, and we've seen this same 42 months. You're going to realize again the Revelations, the stories combined, because 42 months, what is that, right? 42 months. That's 36 would be 3 years, and then another 3 years and 6 months, right? And obviously this is there. If it's going against God, either it's going to be blatantly going against God, or it's going to be some other, religion or some type of thing that it says again that this is the ruling thing. It's not God. This is the ruling. Okay. And he spoke terrible words of blasphemy against God, slandering his name and his dwelling. That is, those who dwell in heaven. Okay. Which is the believers, essentially. The believers of God. Okay. And the beast was allowed to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. Okay. So again, where it says that could be, is that a literal term, right? Is it an analogy? Is it an analogy to say that they were allowed to wage war on all the believers on earth? Essentially, because this is a government agency or like that gets put into power, and now they could say, hey, you're not believing in that, what you're believing, you're going to believe in our way, or it's the highway. You know what I mean? And there's regimes right now that are like that. If we look at different regimes out there, that glorify that leader of that country instead of whatever else is going on. There's regimes like that if you don't glorify the leader of that country, then you're put to death. There is no such thing as any other religion. It doesn't matter if it's Christianity or anything else. Like nope, you're worshiping them or you're dead, right? There's places like that right now. But essentially there's that. Or does this mean, is it talking about Israel essentially, the actual the land and the people there, essentially? But obviously anyone who's a believer is God's holy people, right? So there's not a specific, again, it's not a group of, like, when they say Israel, that's a location, right? The holy city. But we have to remember that God's people are anyone who is a believer. So it doesn't matter what nationality, color, language, it doesn't matter what it is. And there's no bearing on it. It is, are you a believer in Christ? Yes, you are. Then you're one of his holy people, essentially, okay? And he was given authority to rule over every tribe and people and language and nation. So again, that tells you what? That means everyone in the entire world. So this is going to be a position of power, whether it's physical or a literal meaning or not. It's going to be a position of power that's going to basically take over the whole world, essentially. And all the people who belong to this world worship the beast. Okay. So again, they worship the beast. Okay? They are the ones whose names were not written in the book of life that belongs to the Lamb who was slaughtered before the world was made. Okay, so again, that is believers and non-believers. Again, there's two camps, right? It's essentially, let's do a Harry Potter, because I know there's a lot of people watching that are going to understand I don't like it, because obviously there's witchcraft in there, and I watch them all. I used to watch them all the time, but I try to stay away from that stuff now. But just to give you an example, right? You're either Dumbledore's army, which will just, again, I'm not comparing him to God, but, or Voldemort. Your comparison is you're either with God, which is good, the way, the light, and the truth, or you're with, the devil, which is darkness, chains, bondage, torment, slavery, and captivism. Right? That's what you have to pick from. And it says all the people who belong to this world worship the beast. And again, we don't know. A lot of this stuff can be taken literal or physical. You know what I mean? Like, obviously it's going to happen, but you also wonder, like, okay, how many people in the world worship the things of the world and not God, right? They don't put God in that first place. There's a lot of people, right? And again, if you're saved forever. So if you're saved, you're okay. But I'm just bringing some analogies out there to let you look at it, okay? And we know the book of life is essentially everyone who is what? A believer in Christ. That basically they did the salvation prayer. They took Jesus into their heart. They're a believer. That's how your name's written in the book of life. Okay? Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Anyone who is destined for prison will be taken to prison. Anyone destined to die by the sword will die by the sword. Okay, so what that means is essentially it's the old saying that you will reap what you sow, right? So again, if you're doing good fruit and you're doing works of God, you're going to get rewards in heaven. If you're doing bad things, then there are consequences of those. Now, if you're saved, right? If you are saved, you're going to be okay with what? The first death, because you're not going to have a second death going to the burning river of fire. You're going to go to heaven. But again, there are consequences for everything we do. So there is a thing that, like, if you did bad things and you should go to prison, and it's a good chance you may go to prison. If you murdered a bunch of people, then there's a good chance when you die you might be murdered. Okay, if you killed by the sword, again, these are examples. But it's essentially showing that, like, how you live your life does matter. You know what I mean? And again, are you forgiven? Yes, you are forgiven. Are you going to die twice? If you're a believer, no. So you'll die once. So again, if you die by the sword or the gun, because that's the way you were at one time or whatever, or you are now, then you're going to die that way. That's the way it's going to be. You could also look at this, in the fact that it's talking about right now, maybe that it's talking about non-believers, right? That after the church is raptured, that's what would happen to them based off of the different things. Again, we don't know. But let's keep going. This means that God's holy people must endure persecution patiently and remain faithful. Okay, so that also is telling us right there, that line right there is telling us that we are going to be persecuted and we must remain faithful to God. Because what's it say? Do not deny God, essentially. Right? So that's what that's saying. And we know that's going to happen. Because again, we know Jesus was persecuted. They killed him. You know what I mean? Most of the apostles, almost all of them were killed. And not in a quick, easy way. You know what I mean? So again, when it says pick up your cross and bear it, that's what it means. You're going to have to go through pain and suffering. But you will come out good on the end. So, the beast out of the earth. Okay. The beast out of the earth. So again, when it talks about the beast out of the earth, is this talking about Abaddon the destroyer that comes out of the bottomless pit? Because again, it's saying, then I saw another beast come up out of the earth. So again, is it coming from the pit? Or is this, just another beast that comes up? We don't know. It lines up a little bit, so it could be referring to it. Okay, Then I saw another beast come up out of the earth. He had two horns like those of a lamb, but he spoke with the voice of a dragon. Obviously, this is a demonic spirit or some kind of demonic beast, because it says a voice of a dragon. Well, obviously, if it's a dragon, that refers to Satan. It's referring to a Satan-like beast, so we know that that's obviously not it's not from God, right? He exercised all the authority over the first beast, right? And he required all the earth and his people to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. Okay. So, essentially, we know we have the devil, and we have now two beasts, right? Or however you want to play it out. And basically, you're going to be made to worship this beast, or whether it's a literal beast or it's an analogy to a person, you're going to have to worship this person, right? Essentially, is what it's saying. Okay. He did astounding miracles, even making fire flash on the earth from the sky while everyone was watching. Okay. So again, is that going to be a literal, like fire is going to come down? Or is this going to be like they're just going to do so many amazing things that everyone's going to be like, wow, this is the best leader we've ever had? If it's a literal, or if it's an analogy and it's talking about a physical person that's a leader in the world, is it going to be like they're going to be do so many amazing things that everyone will be like, this is the best leader we ever had, and they're essentially going to fool everyone, okay? So let's see. While everyone was watching, and with all the miracles he was allowed to perform on behalf of the first beast, he deceived all the people who belong to this world. So again, that could mean that essentially, if it's an analogy, you have a person that's going to basically fix the world's problems, or at least they're going to say they're going to fix all the world's problems. They're going to be the best leader that we ever had. And they're going to do all these amazing things, and it's going to look like, and they're going to show some amazing things, but it's going to be a fake facade. Okay. Or it could be a literal beast that everyone has to worship. Obviously, everyone's going to know, like, if you see a beast coming out of a pit and you're supposed to worship this beast, you're going to be like, okay, yeah, I get it now. Yep, okay. Yep, God's real, because that's what it said in the Bible. So again, if you pick up on these things, either way, you're going to see the signs. Obviously, if a beast comes out and it's talking and it's not like something we're used to, right? You're going to know, like, whoa, okay, this is what's happened. I need to not submit to this beast. I need to be like, forget it, kill me right now. Go ahead, peace out. I'm going to heaven. One of those types of things, right? But we have to be careful, because if it's a analogy and it's a human, right, that's come in a position of power, that's how you might not realize it, right? So you have to watch out. Okay. It says he deceived all the people who belong to this world. Okay. And again, we know that Satan's a deceiver, right? Because that's what he is. Comes to kill, steal, and destroy through deception. He ordered the people to make a great statue of the first beast, who was fatally wounded and then came back to life. Okay, a great statue. So again, if this is a beast, you're going to see some weird statue of some kind of animal or something, right? If it is a analogy and it's a physical person, then what are they going to do? They're going to want a big statue of them. You know what I mean? So like, let's say you said like, I don't know why, Holy Spirit, thank you. I don't know why the Statue of Liberty just popped into my head. I don't know why, but if we could imagine maybe like a Statue of Liberty, but of a person, something like that. Thank you, Holy Spirit. I don't know why the Statue of Liberty popped in my head, but that literally just came into my head. So again, we don't know what the meaning is, but maybe like that type of statue of a person. And then now, because this person is in charge of the whole world, we all have to be like, yeah, I'm not, I'm obviously not going to worship this thing. I'm going to be like, no, I'm Team Jesus, buddy. So kill me right now if you want to, but I'm Team Jesus. But if it was like that, it would be some type of statue of a person in the world, right? And we know there's other regimes that are like that right now, right? Or if you look back in the Bible in the past, what did they have? They worshiped different statues of animals and stuff. So if it was like, whether it's the Egyptians, the Phoenicians, Babylon, whoever they are, right? Whatever they were at that time, they might either worship like the king, right? King Tut or whatever. They had a big statue of him, or maybe some kind of bird or something, or maybe some type of animal or something, or maybe they worship the moon, you know what I mean, or the star, you know, the sun, worship the sun, you know what I mean. So again, it doesn't describe that, but we can get an idea. We can get the gist of the whole thing. Again, just to sum it up, you're going to see one or two things. There's either going to be some type of animal creature that's going to do some crazy stuff, and they're going to make a statue of it, and you're going to want to worship it, but you're not going to, you know, or you should not, right? Because that's going to lead to destruction. Or it's going to be an analogy, and it's going to be a physical person that's going to set them up, and they're going to think they're the best thing, and they're going to be a person that wants to have statues of them and all that kind of stuff, which is definitely possible. Okay. He required everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. Okay, so he. So again, it's talking about a beast, okay, but it's saying he, right? So again, we don't know, but it's basically saying that everyone in the entire world, right, is going to have to worship this beast or die, right? And then it talks about this mark, right? This mark on the right hand or on the forehead. So again, we don't know if this is a mark that's a physical mark, right, that you would have to take on your arm and hands. Again, obviously, if that would happen in the world, you're going to have ding, 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 red lights are going to be going off. Because if they're like, hey, yeah, you have to have a tattoo on your hand now to buy anything or do commerce or do that, you're going to be like, whoa, okay, yeah, I see red flag going off, ding, 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 right? Or is it going to be like a lot of people talk about, is an electronic chip that's implanted in your hand or your forehead or something? Or is it, you know, is it symbolizing like, you know, a mark on the right hand or on the forehead? You know what I mean? It doesn't say left hand. Like if you think we use our phones a lot so much now, you know what I mean? You just, again, we don't really know, you know, because it's not giving us a good enough descriptor. But there's multiple people have different ideas on this. But again, I don't think it really matters, you know. But it does say Mark, which was either the name of the beast or the number representing his name. So it's going to be some type of name, right? And then if we look at this, wisdom is needed here, okay? Let the one with the understanding solve the meaning of the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. And there's all kinds of people that can go and they'll look at this. And some people say like, actually this was like the number of one of the rulers a long time ago. There's all kinds of different things. We know that 6 is Satan's number because we know that God's number is 7. So again, he's a copycat. So God's number is 7, right? 7 lampfolds, 7 angels, 7 churches, 7 stars, right? And again, we know that the devil uses 6, right? So we can tell that that's, you know, what it is. Again, this chapter, you could take this a bunch of ways. You could take it a bunch of different ways. Some people believe that this is going to be it's all analogies, and that essentially it is going to be where someone's going to essentially come into power, but they're given power by the devil, essentially. And then what happens is that this person is going to pretend to do all these great things. They're going to bring on great stuff. And and it talks about the holy city, so maybe they'll do a peace treaty with Israel, essentially, and they're going to keep that. And there's going to be a time of peace for a certain amount of time, but then that peace they're going to basically go against their word, and they're going to go against their word. And when that happens, they're going to break that, and then all these nations essentially are going to form together as one thing, and you're going to have to worship them. Now we don't know again who that is, but obviously we could see that, you know, there's a lot of countries that if you looked at it, if a bunch of those countries banded together, you know, it could easily be done. The question is who's going to rule them all and who would be in charge of them all, right? Well, that's whoever, you know, Satan, right, puts in charge of them, essentially. And when that happens, there's obviously going to be a religious component of this, because it says you're going to have to worship this beast or this person, right? So you're not going to be able to be like, oh yeah, no, I worship God. It's going to be like, no, you need to worship this. Okay. So there's going to be signs. So you just have to keep a lookout. And again, this chapter, some of them you can explain, some of them are a little bit harder. But again, the main thing you want to take away from this chapter is that when this happens, whether it's a person or whether it's a beast that comes on, everyone's gonna be like, whoa, this is some weird stuff. And you should, the red flags should be going off. If you've read the Bible or if you know about these things in Revelations, you're gonna know like, oh, okay, it's going down. So that is why it's important to know Revelations and at least have a basic understanding of it. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and end this one. I know this one's not as descriptive as some of the other ones, but you're gonna see, we're chapter 13 of 22. You're gonna see it's gonna keep moving along. You're gonna see different things. It's gonna get cool, and like I said, you can take it different ways. But we're gonna cliff note each one so that you can understand them. But the most important thing again is your salvation. So if you're not saved or you don't know what that means, that's okay. Click the more button. Read that salvation prayer out loud. It's the most important thing you can do in your life. That will start your journey with Jesus. Again, most important thing you can do. And he'll work. He'll make a way. He'll work through it. So again, even if you just read it out loud, you don't understand what you're reading, he will make a way. That is what he does. I believe it 100%. He can take the impossible and make it possible. That's why they call him the impossible God. Because he could take what's impossible and he makes it impossible. He's performing miracles every day. So, again, we'll see you in the next one. God bless you and take it easy.